Welcome to the City Manager Candidate Forum. If you'd have a seat, I'd much appreciate it. I'm Dwayne Ford. I am a 16-year resident of Platteville, Wisconsin, and proud of it. And I am also the president of Southwest Wisconsin Technical College. I welcome you all, and I particularly welcome our fine candidates here tonight. First and foremost, everybody with a cell phone or other device, turn it off or make it quiet, please. These are the ground rules. For you in the public, there is a form in the back that looks like this for you to provide comments as you go along or after the end or whenever. And here's how this is going to work. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to introduce him or herself. Then they will have 2 minutes each to answer the questions. And then at the very end, we'll give them each 1 minute to do a final summary statement. After the final statement, the candidates will be available until 5:30 to meet and greet those of you who want to chat with them. And the city has prepared 7 questions, but we'll see how many we get through. Okay, thank you. Let's start in alphabetical order with Brian Chapman. Would you care to give your introduction?
Yeah. Hello, my name is Brian Chapman. Does this work? Can you guys hear me? Okay, very good. All right, my name is Brian Chapman. I'm the Org Development Specialist for the City of Oshkosh. I work on a lot of lean performance improvement projects for the City of Oshkosh. I work on a lot of strategic projects. I've been there for 3 years now. Prior to that, I worked in the City Manager's office at the City of Negaunee up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. They did a lot of strategic projects up there too, worked on a lot of utilities, a lot of different projects throughout the different departments in the city. I have a lot of passion for local government. I've been a little nervous. I'm sorry. I apologize. This is something new for us. I have my master's in public administration. I got it from Northern Michigan University. I was up there for my undergraduate and graduate degree. Like I said, I have a strong, very passionate about local government. I've kind of immersed myself in this world, so I'm really looking forward to coming down, hopefully applying some of my knowledge and what I've been working on here in the city of Platteville. So, thank you.
Thank you. Karen Kurt?
Sure, good afternoon. My name is Karen Kurt, and it's exciting to see so many people spending a Friday afternoon here listening to us. I was born in Dubuque, so I actually have a tie to this area. I grew up in eastern Iowa, and I've lived in the Twin Cities for the last 20 years. I'm currently the assistant city manager for Edina, which is a suburb of Minneapolis. And there I do a wide range of activities. I oversee economic development, our 3 municipal liquor stores. I do strategic planning, performance management and measurement. I oversee our boards and commissions. There's a list here. Elections, records, licensing, and organizational development in our neighborhood program. I'm also sort of the person that does projects as assigned, so whatever the city manager feels he needs help with, and I particularly focus on areas that need a lot of cross-department collaboration. Before that, I was the Human Resources and Support Services Manager for Eden Prairie, Minnesota, which is another suburb in the Twin Cities. And prior to that, I worked in a variety of human resources positions, both in the public and private sectors. I have a bachelor's degree from Cornell University in Industrial and Labor Relations and a master's degree from Minnesota State University in Urban and Regional Studies. In my free time, I love to read, watch independent films. I'd probably be a huge fan of the Driftless Film Festival. I'm an avid but not necessarily gifted tennis player, and I think that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. By the way, that gentleman back there is our timer. Nicholas Owen.
All right. Hi, I'm Nick Owen. I'm currently the village administrator in New Glarus. I've been in that position going on 9 years already. Oversee various village activities from, the clerk treasurer's office, police. We have electric, water, and sewer utilities. I oversee the projects for those. Active in our economic development. We just retired one TID district. We have one for the brewery that's active, and we're looking to start another TID for some various projects that didn't get accomplished in our closed district. Very excited to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. City management is a passion of mine. It's a great great career to be in, I think. Every day brings new opportunities, new challenges for you. Prior to being in New Glarus, I was at the City of West Allis, so I do have a little bigger community experience. I was working in finance development and with the city administrator there. I have a master's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee in public administration, and my bachelor's degree is also in public administration from Stevens Point. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Nathan Teal.
Oh, first off, as a kid, I always hated my name because it was always at the end of the line, but this time it came in handy. So I appreciate that. I also want to just thank Platteville for having us. This is wonderful. It's exciting to be here. A little bit about myself. Basically, right now I'm the city administrator in Mauston, Wisconsin. Have been there going on 5 years. Enjoy it thoroughly. It's been fun. It's been fun to interact with the public. It's been fun to work with our council members and just enjoying the opportunity to both grow the area in economic development. It's been neat. Right now our police chief is just planning on retiring, so that's kind of been an interesting experience too as well, continuing to make sure that we run. Anyways, been there for 5 years. Before that, I served as a budget analyst. I was a numbers guy down in Sugar Land, Texas, a much larger community, about 60,000, going on 80. It was growing quite rapidly. And then before that, I served as an assistant to the public works director in Riverside, Illinois. There, it was interesting because my public works director left, and I was interim director for a good 8 months. And that was also a very enjoyable experience. That kind of sums up my professional life. If you have more questions, I'm sure we'll get to that later. But I graduated with an MPA at the Maxwell School in Syracuse, New York. Enjoyed my time there. I have a beautiful family. I'm from Wisconsin, and I think that pretty much sums everything up. So thank you for having us.
Thank you. We'll start our questions now, and please, as we go through this, if you need me to repeat the question, all you have to do is ask. So our first question, and we will start with Mr. Thiel. What opportunities and challenges do you think the city faces with a university in its community?
Town versus gown. Actually, I think it's an interesting experience, partly because it's an opportunity, I think, to grow economically. I mean, there are pros and cons. One, you have the fluctuation of the students going in and out, in and out. Oftentimes, people see it more as a destination spot for short stints, and then they leave. But at the same time, it breathes life into the community as well. One thing my family enjoys, or will enjoy, is the cultural experience that a university provides too. So I guess the point is that there's pros and cons, but it really is an opportunity, I think, to try to grow together. Oftentimes you have two separate cultures, and trying to make sure that those two cultures are working together and collaboratively is, I mean, I guess the ultimate goal. So.
Thank you. Mr. Owen.
Sure. I think there's a lot of good opportunities there. You have an active student base that you can try and engage in the city, get them active and productive. You also have the added jobs that they provide to your community. Good, solid paying jobs, relatively steady. I guess the budget news this year from the state isn't so great, but hopefully they can work around that. I think, like Nathan said, it gives you a lot of good cultural opportunities that you otherwise probably wouldn't have in a community this size. You know, the college, I think I heard, is about half roughly the population, maybe a little bit under. So I think that really gives you good opportunities. Challenges, I'm sure there's conflicts with the what the university wants versus what the city really wants. The conflict between a bunch of 20-year-old kids running wild and the older populations. But I don't think there's anything there that you really can't get past. It's just about having a open dialogue with the university and the city, trying to find compromises and ways you can work to get over them.
Thank you. Ms. Kurt?
I think I'm going to largely build on what these two gentlemen said before me. Personally, I think the university is a huge asset for the community. It brings a lot in terms of economic development, high-paying jobs. It also brings a workforce that's attractive to other employers that might potentially consider the community, and then also the cultural amenities that were previously mentioned. To me, the challenge is really, how do you preserve the quality of life for both your residents and for the student community? And just from the research I've done, I can see that there are some tensions around issues like parking and housing, and so that's where the rub comes in. How do you manage those issues so that both can live together successfully?
Mr. Chapman?
Building off of what everybody else already said, I think the university is a major opportunity for any organization. In both my communities, we've had universities that we've relied on to help us with a lot of projects and staffing. With the city of Oshkosh, we rely on UWO to help us with interns. They do a lot of special projects for us, a lot of things that we don't have the staff or resources to do, so we lean on them to do a lot of consulting work. We're bringing interns. They do our citizen survey every year, which is a huge help when we're trying to justify a return on investment for citizens and the quality of life that we provide for them. Back in Negaunee, up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, we worked with Northern Michigan University, which is my university, on a couple of different initiatives. Northern Michigan University is a laptop school, so if you go to school there, you get a laptop. Doesn't matter what you're doing, you get a laptop for 2 years. After 2 years, you get another laptop. That's the biggest appeal for Northern. One of the things they wanted to do was make that whole area wireless accessible, so they installed WiMAX capability all throughout the communities. I worked with Northern to get WiMAX to Negaunee, which was 20 minutes outside of Marquette, so that we can start bringing some of those students our ways a little bit and try to get them to fill up our rental units within the city. So it took a few months, but we were able to get that there. We negotiated a contract with them to actually provide us with internet service, so that was a cost that we were able to reduce in our organization. So in both communities, it's been a huge opportunity. It's been a huge resource and asset for us. So,
Thank you. Question number 2, and we'll start with Mr. Chapman. What specific actions do you think municipal government should do to encourage economic development?
Partnering up with any kind of organization that you can, working with the Chamber of Commerce and any kind of recruitment. I think the biggest thing a lot of local municipalities can do is really stay at home and work with those businesses that are already in their community. Creating a retention and expansion program, trying to find out what their needs are. Again, partnering with the university, I'm trying to find out what the key workforce is for the city and trying to create programs with that. One of the things we're working on at Oshkosh is partnering with the university to have more technical students there to help support our business aviation project. Can't remember the tag end of that name, but so partnering with a lot of the different organizations within the community. Definitely got to work with the state, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, the technical colleges. I don't think a municipality can really lead economic development. They have to kind of be a catalyst and collaborate with a lot of different organizations and businesses within the community. So,
Thank you. Mr. Teal?
Well, I right now currently serve on the Juneau Economic Development Corporation, their board. And so in Mauston, we've been actually working very hand in hand, trying to promote economic development within not even just our city, but also the surrounding area, the communities that surround Mauston. I've also served, we partnered with a group called the Community Venture Network out of Minnesota. And that's been an interesting experience because we're able to go basically to a venue where there are businesses that are looking to grow in the rural market, and then work with them to see if there are solutions for, or our area might be a home for them. I guess the reason why I bring this up is, from my standpoint as a city administrator, city manager as a city, a lot of economic development hinges on networking and building and strengthening relationships. And as long as you leverage those relationships and you leverage collaboration and strengthening ties, economic development just tends to happen. You don't need to force it, you don't need to will it, and technically speaking, you generally can't. Oftentimes, developers come, they say, hey, I want a big fat incentive, which is great, but generally speaking, they probably already know that they want to locate in your community if they're even speaking to you at that point in time. So it's been, at least in Mauston, it's been an interesting experience kind of growing and seeing that difference. One other thing that I would just point out is that oftentimes we look for, that silver bullet or the silver bullet to come in and bring in additional jobs, but oftentimes the growth happens at a regional level. There are businesses and organizations within your own network that want to grow and want to expand. And I guess that goes again to that whole networking, making sure that you are aware and cognizant of what is happening and who is growing. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Owen?
I think collaboration is really the key. From what I've seen, Platteville has a lot of great organizations already working on this, between PADIC, Grand County Economic Development, the Chamber of Commerce, the Main Street. It's just bringing all those groups together when necessary and trying to produce the best outcome possible, put together the best package to assist businesses to come. In addition, I think you need to talk with your local businesses, not only about what their needs are for expansion, what would help them stay here, but what would they like to see? Is there a supplier that they would like to see that would help them to cut costs by having them closer to the community? So I think it's just building those networks, working with the state. The state's been very active with economic development and just trying to find the programs that work with the assets you already have in place.
Ms. Kurt?
Once again, I'm going to concur with some of the comments that my predecessors made. I agree that partnerships are key, and I also think it's often more effective to grow existing businesses than to try and recruit businesses to the community. I think from a local government perspective, it's a lot about putting the right building blocks into place to support the business community. So things like making sure that you have space available, you've got the right transportation infrastructure, you've got a skilled workforce, you've got workforce housing available. With respect to downtowns, it can be things like the right mix of activities going on, so you've got vibrancy there throughout the day. I also think with respect to economic development, it can be very effective to look at clusters where you might have a cluster of businesses, because that can often be a place where you can attract more easily other businesses to help support that cluster, and then you create a synergy that then builds upon itself.
Thank you. Question number 3. Discuss your process for developing and managing a budget. Discuss your process for developing and managing a budget. Ms. Kurt.
Well, when I started with the City of Edina, budgeting was something that we weren't doing terribly effectively. So I would say in terms of our process, we start early. We actually do a 2-year budget. And we do our operating budget for 2 years, and then on the off years we do a capital budget. We set a calendar. We start with a strategic planning session with our council to determine what their priorities are for that 2-year cycle. And then we take those priorities, we actually do a retreat with our staff. That's something that I facilitate. And we come up with the tactics that we want to recommend to the council to support their key objectives. And then that sort of becomes the foundation for our budgeting work. Then the departments go off, they put the numbers to those actual objectives. We come back, and then we go through a series of citizen input sessions. In terms of managing or ongoing management of the budget, that's largely done at the department level, but we do quarterly progress updates with our council. We call them business meetings. We'll actually review our budget and where we're at with respect to our work plan.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman.
When I first started in Oshkosh, I was in the finance department, so I went through a couple budget cycles with them. What we typically did was we did a strategic planning session similar to what my predecessor was talking about. Identified those high-level outcomes, the key metrics that we wanted to kind of measure our city on. We went to an analysis. We looked at revenues, expenditures, what would we expect to happen for the next couple of years, a lot of what the revenues from the state's going to be like. Are they going to cut us short? Are they going to hopefully add a little bit in there? But that never really seems to happen. But basically, where are they going to make the cuts and how are we going to fill up the holes? We play with the numbers with the with our benefits and our salaries. Make sure we're going to be able to cover those. After we get the parameters from the council in terms of what their comfort level is with a tax increase or if they're going to stay flat, we move into the department submitting all their budget requests, trying to identify their direct links to the strategic plan. So it's a little bit easier when we take it to council. We can say, this was an outcome that you're looking for. These are the plans, the projects that we have put together that's going to help you with that. After that, we have a lot of community involvement. The department heads go in front of the council and repeat all the stuff that they've basically told the city manager and I. Process usually takes about 2 months. After that, it's adopted in November. Following up throughout the year with that, we do quarterly updates on the budget and on the strategic plan because that's kind of got a direct link there. But it's basically it. So it's about a 2-3 month long process that we usually do. So.
Thank you. Mr. Teal.
I'm always surprised whenever you say my name. It's nice. So first off, I guess there are a couple of things. I presume that we have a foundation already set. We have some long-term plans. We have strategic plans, things of that nature, kind of set to give a framework or goals. But then from that point, we're forecasting first our revenues and also seeing where our expenses, where we plan on our expenses ending out at the end of the year. Typically, I do that about 6 months before the next budget cycle. That way you have 6 months of data to look at. From that point, we're talking with the council members, seeing kind of what their feelings, their senses are with the revenue, looking at performance measurements, comparing them to our strategic plans and our goals to set some I guess, benchmarks or some parameters for our department heads and our staff. They will then take those parameters, go and refine their budgets and bring back their recommendations. We review them. Typically, I like consistency. I don't like to see a lot of change from year to year to year. And so we try to budget accordingly. Usually our debt service, if we can, for our capital or our equipment. Typically I'll have an equipment replacement fund, or we established an equipment replacement fund in Mauston so that we knew from year to year what equipment we were planning to replace. And we used a pay-as-you-go system, so we were saving up and spending it when we needed it, so that we didn't have to struggle to find, hey, how are we going to buy this fire truck? As far as our infrastructure, we would plan out our debt service, and we would try to keep our debt service at a consistent level from year to year to year, so that it wasn't a struggle when we needed to repave a road. That was, of course, a pay-as-you-use system. Point is that if we can have consistency, I think it helps department heads to also plan for the future. And typically then, new items or new requests, we would have those submitted in. I'm done. Sorry.
It's all right. Mr. Owen.
Typically, my budgeting process starts out by going to the council to try and get their directives. What are their priorities for the year? What would they like to accomplish? From there, I take that to the department heads so they can prepare their department budget for what's coming up in the coming year. Then we whittle it down, try and get it within our levy limits, and try and get an acceptable mill rate, whatever the council asked us to produce. One thing we have been doing since I started in New Glarus is a 5-year financial plan, looking at not only the capital projects and budget out 5 years, but also forecasting the operating budget out 5 years. The councils really like that. It's helped them kind of see the big picture, see where, big projects, how that affects the future mill rate, how new debt affects the future mill rate. That's been one good thing that I brought to New Glarus is kind of seeing the bigger financial picture, not just looking at every year's budget, but also seeing how this year affects, the next 3, 4, 5 years. As far as management, it's kind of an ongoing thing for me. You know, I review financials regularly. We give quarterly updates to the board on where we're at year to date with the budget. You know, working with department heads when they come up with an issue, whether it's we've been down police officers for the last few years, so there's been more overtime trying to work through that with them, or, you know, if unexpected emergencies come up, working with them and presenting that to the board so they're not surprised when they get that big quarterly update.
Thank you. Question number 4. Briefly discuss your background in personnel management, including recruitment, evaluation, and retention of staff. Mr. Owen.
Sure. In New Glarus, I serve as the personnel manager as well as the administrator. As far as recruitment, most of it's been locally done. We've gone broader for departments. I've had to recruit a police chief during my time. Fortunately, we haven't had a whole lot of staff turnover, so I haven't had to do that a whole lot. Evaluation, annually I do all the department head evaluations. Have a pretty good process set up, I think. They fill out a form, we sit down and meet, discuss areas where they can improve, areas where they're doing well. As far as retention, annually when we put the budget together, you know, that's a big part of it, trying to keep our salaries competitive. Being a small municipality, we're not always able to do that, but we really haven't lost a lot of personnel because of just the straight up dollar issue.
Ms. Kurt.
I have a pretty extensive background in human resources management because that was my profession before I moved into the assistant city manager role. So I think I've recruited and filled every position possible in local government except for maybe a police chief, although I think I've done that internally as well. Performance evaluation systems, you know, I've worked with employee committees to create performance evaluation systems. When I worked at Eden Prairie, we went from, when I started, 17% of our staff having reviews to having over 95% of our staff getting annual reviews. I'm also a big proponent of organizational development and employee engagement, and so we do a lot of activities, both when I was at Eden Prairie and in Edina, to support our employees' engagement with their organization. And so, for example, when we hire new employees, we actually have the finalists go through a peer interview panel where they have 3 of their peers from other segments of the organization that actually participate in the interview process and give feedback to that hiring manager.
Mr. Chapman.
During my time with Oshkosh, I've been in the Human Resource Department for a couple of years now. I led recruitments for several positions. The only thing I haven't done is department heads, and we typically consulted those out to Voorhees and Associates or another firm to typically do those for us. With the recruitments, I've actually worked on the process as well to kind of streamline that, make it a lot easier. I led an initiative that took it completely paperless for the applicant and for the staff. Now the applicants have the ability to apply online. We receive all their stuff digitally. We have tablets now that during the interviews we take all our notes. They have all their stuff right there. So I've done the recruitments and I've worked on the process. Evaluation, same thing. I've been on both sides of the table. I've been evaluated. I've evaluated subordinates, even though they're interns, but still evaluated them a little bit. I've led employee group teams to kind of redo our whole evaluation process. I've implemented new forms. Prior to Acts 1032, we had about 15 to 20% of our workforce regularly have evaluations complete on them. And after that, we switched to the vast majority, maybe 85 to 90% of our workforce now requiring evaluation. So I put together all the training, all the forms, we put together the system, we implemented it over the course of 3 months. And so I'm very versed in evaluations. Retention, I've worked on that a little bit with the city. One of the biggest things that we did was a class and compensation study to make sure we were paying our employees fairly. Part of the deliverable out of our evaluation system, we created a new merit award as well. We're trying to keep some of those high performers within our organization. So we use the evaluation tool to document if they are a high performer, and we use the award to try to keep them on board as long as we can so they're not going to another organization. So.
Mr. Teal.
So when I arrived in Mauston, we actually didn't even have a personnel manual. So that was a fun exercise and trying to basically get everything up to speed. And I guess what I would preface any comment is that, you know, you always want to do more. There's always a perfect way or theories out there for personnel and how to manage them, how to retain them, how to motivate them and encourage them. And it's a fun and it's an interesting experience. It's an enjoyable experience as long as you have the time and the willpower to continue to do it. And anyway, that set aside, one of the things that I really like or appreciate is trying to set a framework first. There are several best practices or management books out there. One of my favorites is Leadership and Self-Deception. And sometimes having a framework or trying to have common language is really good for motivating and making sure that we're talking the same language. As far as evaluations, performance evaluations, that was something that we implemented in Mauston. And right now we're working on trying to get to the point where it's not just an annual performance evaluation, but it's more regular, it's more routine during the entire year, that feedback loop continues to come into play. We also want to tie those to performance measurements. And so what I was saying again is that it would be nice to have a perfect scenario, but that's something that we're working towards continually, trying to perfect that communication, that feedback loop between management and between staff. As far as recruitment, I've done several recruitments in all areas or every position that I was in. Most recent, we recruited a lieutenant to the police department. We looked both externally and internally. I was working hand in hand with the PFC, of course, and recruitment was fun. I'm done. Trying to use up all 2 minutes because I figure we're just speeding through these questions, right?
Thank you. Question number 5. Can you give specific examples of your ability to provide leadership in municipal government? And Ms. Kurt, we'll start with you.
That's a tough one. I'm going to start with an example that is, again, related to my work at Edina. And so when I started there, I described it as being 100 balls in the air. And we were just trying to do so much and juggle so many things. And a lot of those balls were dropping along the way. And so one of the things that I was able to do was to work both with the city manager and with our council to talk with them about this idea of let's start to put together a work plan and actually prioritize what's most important to us, so that we're making sure that we're not off spending our time on something that's really only important to 1 or 2 of the council members when there's something that was terribly important to all 5 of them. It's 5 in my case. And so that was an area where I think I was able to provide some leadership and structure in terms of how we work together so that we could be more effective. And I think the councils really appreciated having that tool. I'm sure all of us demonstrate leadership very frequently in our roles. You know, another area where I've shown leadership or initiative is with respect to small area plans. I work in a community that is fully developed and it's in the redevelopment stage, and we have a lot of neighborhood nodes, commercial nodes that are ripe for redevelopment, and we weren't getting that planning work done, and it was causing a lot of frustration with our residents because the projects would come in and they wouldn't feel like there'd been enough input up front. And so one of the things I was able to do was actually to put together a small area plan template, and then during the last year actually go out and test that process with a small area plan for one of our commercial nodes so that we were actually able to get in front of that development curve.
Thank you. Mr. Owen.
One of the examples of leadership in my current position that comes to mind is leading our community development authority through a planning process. I had a very active, engaged CDA, and they were looking for new ways to help New Glarus grow outside of TIF. You know, their part in the TIF process was important, but after that's done, they were just kind of sitting there waiting and, you know, having meetings to see each other, basically. So we engaged a community visioning process where we brought members of the community in, asked what they thought was important, what they'd like to see happen. and ultimately developed a revolving loan fund. It'll be funded out of tax increment district money, and then eventually, once the TID closes, it can be used village-wide. But basically, it was, you know, hearing what they want to do and then trying to find a way to make it happen. You know, reaching out to the community, seeing what priorities were, and, you know, leading the group through that. Other than that, I think it's just, you know, every day trying to be the best administrator you can be, trying to set a good example for your employees, you know, be a hard worker, be open to them, let them know you're there to hear their concerns, work related, and help them through any problems that arise.
Mr. Teal.
I don't consider myself the most charismatic person, so that's kind of a downfall as far as leadership. But where I do try to succeed or compensate is listening and trying to identify and envision what will bring success. One example is in Mauston, we had a problem was a 50-year-old problem. It was the fairgrounds, and not to give you a belabored history, but basically everybody wanted it to improve, wanted it to grow, and it was kind of stuck in the mud. So they created this group, this entity that had, you know, county participation, city participation, community participation, trying to work through the bugs, and so that was a 10-year problem that still hadn't gotten very far. And you heard, as a city administrator, kind of on the sideline, I heard all the things that were going on, and to be quite frank, personally, I felt it was a problem that was unsolvable. It was just in deadlock. And then my mayor thought it a great idea to stick me on the committee. That was fun. But from that, it was a great experience because we actually did some turnaround. And just last year, we built the first building in that fairgrounds in over 20 years. And we had probably the most active fair last year. And I guess the point is that, again, it goes back to that networking and that collaboration, and it goes back to listening and trying to identify areas where are we stuck, and what processes or procedures, what organizational structure do we need in order to make this succeed and not fail. And I guess that would be the area, not just in J.C. Ayers or the Juneau, the fairgrounds, but in other realms too, both in economic development. We saw things succeed because of listening. So.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman.
My leadership within municipalities, in Oshkosh, I'm responsible for leading a lot of teams. That's the bulk of my day-to-day activities. So whenever I have a team bring together, we typically have a group of volunteers or people who are forced to be on these teams. So whenever I'm trying to lead them through these process improvement projects, they kind of look to me to kind of see what we're going to be doing and what we're doing. I'm sorry, I completely went blank. When I'm doing process improvement projects, the leadership comes into play in trying to keep people motivated and keep them focused on the bigger picture. We did a process improvement project based on our site plan review process, and we took a group of employees that really didn't have any desire to be on this team, and I was able to create this spark in them that was really to get them to change their processes and look at what they're doing in a different way. One of the ways that we did that was we brought building developers and contractors onto the team, and we asked them up front, across the table, what do you guys have issues with us? What's the process? What's the problems? And how can we work with you to fix these? And once the staff understood what the problems were coming from the customers, they kind of saw that it wasn't them, that our project wasn't saying that you can't do your job. There's just some areas that we can improve. So a lot of my leadership within the organization comes from leading a lot of positive change within the organization. We brought about a clinic, the NEOGA, or the evaluation system, a lot of these process improvement teams. The city's really looked to me to kind of bring about that change, and some of it's been a lot easier, some of it's been very difficult, but that's where a lot of my leadership comes from.
Thank you. Question number 6. how would you encourage active involvement of citizens in the government of the city of Platteville? Mr. Owen.
I think the first and probably best thing you can do is be open with them. You know, encourage them to come to you when they have questions. Encourage them to come to the board meetings, and you know, when they do come, actually listen, take notes, be attentive to them. Try and find out what their real issue is, where their real passions are, and see if you can line that up with either a volunteer opportunity, you know, a committee that they might serve well on. I think it all boils down to being a good active listener and trying to get to the root of what the real issue is. And then, you know, trying to take that beyond that and trying to actually engage them in helping solve the issue.
Mr. Teal.
When I arrived in Boston, things had been kind of dying as far as community involvement, community engagement. It was kind of seen as a community that was just surviving, and there wasn't a lot of excitement or enthusiasm amongst the public or amongst the community. And one of the things that we really focused on, both with the council, which was, I mean, their visioning too as well, was creating a sense of place and trying to inspire some type of devotion or gratitude for the community that you live in. And that underlying cultural theme, I think, does more to engage and commit people to participate in the government that they're in the community that they're in. People see not themselves as a participating government, they see themselves as a part of a community, as in neighborhoods. And when you try to strengthen and revitalize that sense of community, it's empowering. Just a couple of things. One thing that I've always wanted to do, I haven't had the chance, is creating a 101, Government 101, or Platteville 101 it would be, or Boston 101. And the idea is that by, you know, getting people to participate in that, you're going to start to find those who would like to serve on committees and boards and commissions. They'll have kind of that foundation to start from. One thing that we do in Boston that's been incredible, wasn't a government entity, but it was a nonprofit, is called Sharing Supper. A local leader, a community activist, set up a supper every single month where the business community basically pays for the meal. And everybody and their dog can come and participate in this meal. And it's breaking down barriers, breaking down cultural barriers, and trying to connect us as a community again. Things like that inspire wanting to participate.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman.
I think there's a lot of different things you can do to make citizens a little bit more involved in your community. Technology plays a big role in that. Twitter, Facebook, websites. There's a lot of easy ways of having static communications go out there to kind of spread your message and show the good things that you're doing for the citizens. But I think it takes an active government to really make an active citizenry. So creating areas where you can have public forums, trying to get them out of their houses and in a downtown area. One of the things that we did in Agani to try to get them more active and kind of create that cohesiveness in the community, we put on community events. We had a great big park that we bought from an old mining community and tried to get people down there involved in it. We put farmers markets there. We almost held a council meeting outside, but it got rain too. So we're just trying to do anything to get people in that area. People are going to stay home if you're not an active government trying to promote that. You want them to be active. You know, again, technology, the citizen boards, trying to find opportunities for them to have input. I think any kind of engagement that you're going to do, you have to measure it to a certain degree to make sure that you're reaching people and that your messages are getting out there. Yeah, so a lot of different ways.
Thank you. Ms. Kurt.
I think with respect to engagement, you definitely have to use all of the media channels you have available to you, especially social media, to help get the word out just of the opportunities there are to be involved. I also think that sometimes it's more effective rather than expecting people to come to you to go out to where the people are. So with a project that I just finished working on, Vision Edina, we actually contacted every organization we could think of and said, if you can just give us 20 minutes, you know, we want to come out. We want to give your group an opportunity to kind of hear a little bit about this and to give feedback. So we visited high school classes, we visited soccer associations, neighborhood associations, churches, any group that we could think of, but we came to a place where there were already people gathered. I think it's important when you do get people together not to use government speak, you know, but really to kind of have it be understandable. And there's a term that Target used to use for their workforce called fast, fun, and friendly. And I think that that's kind of what we have to aim for as well, as an event or something that's fast, fun, and friendly that really builds energy in people. And then finally, I think that it's important if you are getting people involved, or especially if you're gathering input for something, that you finish the circle and you let them know why their input mattered, so they can understand how that was used and feel the value of having given up their valuable time to have participated.
Okay, our seventh and final question. How do you envision the city supporting and enhancing the public schools? Mr. Teal.
That's a fun question. You know, you always see with competing tax jurisdictions that idea of competition and not necessarily wanting to break down those silos of organization. One area that I think is a very easy area has to do with athletic fields and parks. Typically schools generally have parks, and typically it's something that cities like to have too as well, or communities like to have. And the coordination and collaboration with the park system is kind of easy pickings. Technology is another area. One area too that I see cities, especially when it comes to economic development, is working with the Economic Development Corporation and the school and the city to try to structure ways to keep our youth engaged and active and a part of the community rather than leaving for college and then not coming back. Can you repeat the question just one more time? I want to make sure that I cover this one. I liked it so much.
How do you envision the city supporting and enhancing the public schools?
So one other thing that I guess having collaboration also with the superintendent, having communication or direct dialogue between the schools. So in a perfect case in point, that sharing supper that I was talking about last time, that actually is held at the public school. And so it was not only a community activist, not only assisted by the city of Mauston, not only assisted by the business community. I mean, all of those entities were working together. And so striving towards that, I guess, is the bottom line. Knowing that there's a big tax push or a referendum, that also means that the city may need to be cognizant of that. Likewise, hopefully there's collaboration on the all other side too as well.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman.
I think partnering with the schools whenever they get an opportunity to would be a huge asset to the city. Trying to enhance the school, though, there's only so much you can do. Working with the parks, stuff like that. We've partnered with the school on a lot of different opportunities in Oshkosh. The clinic that we put in was a joint venture to make sure that both of our operating budgets remain kind of static. The way we approach a lot of things is that we have the same tax base that we're trying to draw money off of, and if one's working diligently at trying to keep their taxes low and the other one's kind of spending, we're not going to have a good balance there within the city. So we partner with the school district a lot of wellness initiatives, health insurance stuff. We understand that the schools is a big picture of our economic development as well. If you have poor schools within the city, nobody's going to want to relocate their workforce here. So whenever we get an opportunity to try to help build up the school a little bit, we do. They play a central role in our neighborhoods. So there's a lot of different ways that we can try to enhance the school district.
Ms. Kurt.
I also agree that I think quality schools are a big economic development driver. And in a world of shrinking resources, it's really important that both groups work together to really maximize our value for our tax dollars. And sometimes that can be as simple as the city being able to use gyms for recreational program, or the school being able to use athletic fields for some of their programming. In Edina, we also have worked hard to get our students involved in local government. We have students that sit on our boards and commissions. We had students that were involved in the Vision Edina process that I just mentioned. We have a engineering class that we work regularly with, and they will use a city project as one of their class projects, and they'll take a particular challenge that the city's facing and apply engineering solutions to it. So not knowing the specific issues that might exist with the school district here, I mean, I think those are the general concepts. It's just to keep the communication open and then to look for opportunities where you can help each other out.
Mr. Owen.
I think, again, this item kind of comes down to communication and collaboration, you know, having an open dialogue with the school, finding out what their needs are, talking about ways you can help them. For New Glarus, we have regular meetings, the village administration, department heads, and the school talk about everything from, you know, park space to sidewalks, traffic going into the school, just trying to work together to find common ways we can solve an issue. We're working on potential softball fields with them. Currently, the school uses the village facility. We may be looking at using that for a different use, so partnering on a best way to do that, most cost-effective way. Traffic is always a problem at the school. A lot of people dropping their kids off, picking them up after school. So, you know, communicating between the public works and police chief as well as the school on, you know, different ways can we route traffic this way versus that way. Just trying to, you know, be open with them, know that we're there to listen, we're there to help in any way we can. We've discussed, you know, a potential community liaison officer who would be part-time at the school to help out their kids with various issues as they come up. So again, just, you know, trying to be open with them, have that communication, know that we're partners in this, and we're there for them and they're there for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And by the way, Superintendent Valenza is here this evening, so. Okay, 1 minute for final statements, and we will go in the same order as the last question. So, Mr. Teal, you're up.
Well, final statement, I guess. You've heard a lot of good answers tonight. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed hearing the answers. There are things that I wish that I could have even added to what I was saying. But once again, I guess just grateful for the opportunity to be here. This is where things happen in our communities, and oftentimes it doesn't get seen. And it's just fun to be a part of it. It's fun to make a difference. It's fun to see change take place. As far as myself, I mean, I just want to stress again, I am not the most charismatic person in the world, but I do listen, and I appreciate hearing the thoughts and trying to find answers and solutions to just common problems where we've been stuck. And so it'd be fun, and I look forward to the opportunity just to participate with that here in Platteville. So if you have any questions, even if there's something that I said tonight that you would like to learn more about, I'm more than willing to share that information. So,
thank you. Mr. Chapman.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. Aside from a bit of nerves in my stomach right now, I thought it went pretty good. So, you know, this is something I've worked very hard for. Just being in front of everybody tonight is just a huge accomplishment for me. I started my career back 8 years ago now as an intern. I've worked my way through the ranks. So just being here, it's just incredibly humbling for me. So I want to thank you for coming out, giving me an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit and stutter for the most part, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much. If you have any more questions, please feel to come up and ask away. So
thank you. Ms. Kurt.
I also want to thank everyone for allowing me this opportunity. Since I'm a little different from the other three candidates in that I'm not Wisconsiner, I'm not sure what the right word is. She said, okay. I just wanted to comment briefly on why I'm here tonight. And in addition to Platteville being a wonderful community with a lot of great assets, and that is really that I reached a point in my life where I realized that I want to be closer to my family. So I have a very specific target of where I'm looking for a new opportunity. I'm not just looking anywhere. I want to be within 2 hours of where my parents and sister live in eastern Iowa. And so in Platteville just fit it perfectly, both in terms of location and a solid management team and the great assets that the community has. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Owen.
I'd just like to, thank the city council for having me interview for this position, and everybody for turning out tonight. It's great to see so many people excited about local government, or if not excited, at least willing to come here and participate. I think Platteville's a great community. I've done some research, done some calling, showed up early and drove around a little bit, checked out the sites, and it looks like you have a lot of great things going for you, and I think I'd be a good fit to help move this community forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give our candidates a round of applause. I'll remind those of you in the audience that there is a comment form that you can pick up back there by Barb Doss. And,
Thank you.
And that brings our candidate forum to a close. Thank you all very much. The candidates will be here until 5:30 if you want to chat with them.
And you're totally I don't know about that.